This is the card that we're making today. Okay, and it's got a gel plate background. Now my gel plate may shock some people because it's pretty grotty and there's a build up of paint, but I always trim my cards down so that doesn't worry me. A few pock marks here and there in my gel plate, but that just adds texture and interest to your background. You know, that's the way I like to think of it. So that's my gel plate. For those who are interested, it is about 5 by 8. And you can't buy 5 by 8. I cut down a large one to a size that I wanted. And I Googled how to do that. It's simpler than you think. So easy. Probably the hardest part is making it straight. So I've got my gel plate. Then I've got my Dina Wakley paints because I like using paint that's full bodied, and these are really good to use. So there's white, Sedona, lemon and cheddar. And of course a brayer to put the paint on with. The inks that I'm using are Elements inks, and I'm using paprika. No, I'm not. I'm using confetti and russet orange. I'm using Acrylic ink because that stamps best on a painty background, and that's what I'll be doing in this card. It dries and it doesn't smudge. It's slow drying, but with a heat tool you can speed it up a bit. I'm using my Lavinia brush because this is awesome for putting ink on through a stencil. And I'm using a Lavinia stencil, feather leaf, scissors and maybe a craft knife. The stamp sets that I'm using today are from Rubber Dance, and I'm using, you won't be able to read this there backwards, but it's Think Again, which has some really nice sayings on it, and Sketchy Flowers to Single, which is just amazing. That's a card all by itself. Now what I've done is I've stamped the flower out twice. One on a scrap bit. I only want this part of the flower, so that's fine, just on a scrap piece of paper. And I cut a whole one out. Now I've cut this one out ahead of time because cutting out 2 complicated patterns will probably take me 3/4 of an hour. So I did the big one and I'll do this one in real time. And what else do we need? Got the stamps, got the brayer and the glue. Now quite often when I'm doing a card and I have a distress ink background, I just use paper glue because sticking a cutout paper image to a paper background with just ink on it, you just need a paper glue. But this is a paint background, so that's not an ink background. It's a paint background, and for a paint, things don't stick quite the same. So you need a stronger glue. I just use the funky stick because that's quite a strong glue. Okay, now let's make a start. Oh, sorry, you need some card. This is an A4 piece cut in half. And you need some photocopy paper or scrap paper for rolling your brayer on to clean it. Okay, let's go down to the table. Sorry, that was a bit quick, wasn't it? We'll put that one to the side and put the gel plate. Can everyone see that? Now I can't see the comments on the screen at the moment because the camera's facing down, so I'll just work ahead. I'm using the 3 colours to start with, and I'm going to put a little bit of yellow up the top, a little bit of orange in the middle, and that's about all you need on there, and Sedona for a darker look down the bottom. Now my card isn't this size, I'll trim it down later. Hold this up so you can see. That's all the ink I'm using. You don't want to use more than that because it'll go gluggy and thick and heavy. So I just want it thin. and you just roll it. I'm just rolling off to the side. I'll put that there so you can see it. If it looks a bit thick, I'm just rolling off excess. Like that. Ooh. I think I hate it when your braid doesn't roll properly. Got to get that spin happening, I think. I might lighten a couple of areas with a little bit of white as well. We're going to be using white as well, so it won't hurt to put it on at this stage. And it'll just make the lemon colour more lemony. I look like I've lost my Sedona down the bottom, so I'll just put a little bit more of that on. You can do anything while it's wet. And then you leave that to dry. Now, just cleaning my brayer because I'm going to be using white with my brayer. Put that aside, and I want to show you something that I made. I need that to dry so that I can lift the print. This is one that I made. You have your leftover part from your rolling when you're cleaning your brayer. I've made myself a little journal with a scrap piece of paper, so I'm going to do something with that. Just like that, little mini journal. So that's something you can do with your scraps, because I know a lot of people ask me, what do I do with my leftover pieces of photocopy paper? Do I just throw them out, or what do I do? Well, one thing you can do is make a mini journal. So if you're doing this at home, stamp out your flowers. You don't have to be using the same flowers as me, just whatever flowers you've got. I liked a nice big one. So that one's all done. And then I'll cut this one out. So I'm just using one flower, so I'm going to cut that flower off. That's rubbish. And cutting. They've just got to watch me cut. If you're watching this on replay, just skip forward. Just skip forward, because this will take me a little while. I'm a very slow cutterer. I think that's a word, isn't it? Isn't that a word we all use when we're cutting out? I cut off excess bits because they seem to get in my way a little bit and throw me off. Try and have it so that you can see the inked edge. But what we'll do is we'll go around with a bit of black soot. I didn't put that in the description, but that's okay. It's just a finishing off thing to have a bit of black soot, distress ink. Okay, have it around that leaf. Like that. It's very quick and easy, this part of it, because I'm just using a flower and a few leaves, so I'm cutting off the berries and those fiddly bits. I'm not worried about those. Not for this. And also, if you've gone in too far with your cutting out, it's a good way to put a black edge back where you've cut one off. Just a little trick. that we use in our crafting, isn't it? Crafting's full of little tricks. Okay, now we're there. Did I tell you how slow I am at this? That's okay. It's just a relaxing thing sometimes, especially when it's an easy image. Right. That's all I wanted from that stamped image. So now I've got my 2 stamped images from the one stamp. So that'll go down the bottom and that'll come down the top. So one of the things that when you're doing a card like this, there's a thing called composition that I don't know if you've heard people talk about composition or not, but one of the things, it's like a counterweight. You have a big image down here and you have a smaller image diagonal and up in another area. I think a lot of people use that technique in scrapbooking. You can use it in art journaling, and of course we can use it in card making. So I've got my big image down here and my smaller counterweight up here. So that's part of the composition of a card. Now I'll just see if that's dry. That looks pretty dry. Nothing's coming off on my hand. So I can now pull that print. For this I need to have my card ready, and I need my white ink. How it works, when it's dry, it's dried paint. When I put wet paint on, it sticks to the dry and lifts it off. So it's pretty simple once you know what you're doing. And again, we'll see if that's enough. And we'll just that's a little bit thick, so I'll take some off, and how you take paint off is you roll it off. Okay, that's a little bit translucent. I can almost see the paint underneath, so I know that's ready. And then I just put my card down. If you're using a bigger gel plate and you've got bits of it sticking out from your card, all you do is put that down, and then you don't get paint on your fingers. Mine fits onto this size, so I don't have to worry about it. But if you're using a bigger gel plate, that's what you need to do. Give it a good rub. You want to make sure it sticks all over. If you go, there's no need to put all your weight on it, but you don't want to do it just softly, you know, like that, because it's not, you're not getting the wet paint to stick to the dry. So you need to be firm pressure. But make sure you get every little bit, and you can lift up the corner and see. It looks like it's missed a bit down there, so I'll just put that down and give it another rub. That's okay. And that's my piece. So nice and rustic, which is what I want. And you can see all the pock marks from my gel plate. So I think they look pretty awesome. I'm happy with that. Very, very happy with that. And I will dry it just to be on the safe side. Because it helps it sit flat. I'm going to trim that down to the size that I've already used. So just a sec, I'll do that. at that. And that's my trimmed down piece. You see that? Now before we go any further, what I'm going to do is get my Distress ink. Now, I apologise, I didn't put this item in the product list. And I'm just going to edge it now so it's got time to dry. It also darkens it up. It's a really pretty way to finish images off. And if you haven't been perfect with your cutting out and you've got little bits of white showing, it colours it in. So I'm not being too fussy. I'm just making sure that the black is black on the edge. And I'll do the other one. It makes the image pop when you put it onto a background. I think if you're new to crafting, you don't always know what the finishing off parts of doing something are, so this is one of them. Oh, that looks good. I can notice the difference as I'm doing it. There we go. How's everyone going at home? They really stand out. Just that tiny bit more. It's subtle, but as crafters, you know that it's all those subtle things that make a difference. So that's the Sedona part. That's the lemon part up there and the orange in the middle. I'm going to turn that around so I've got the dark colour at the bottom. Get those out of the way. And I'm going to put a bit of white paint on my craft sheet and just get a narrow bit happening on your brayer, because then you've got control over where you're putting it. And I'm just adding an edge. And bring it in, and I'm just making it that little bit more rustic. I like rustic. Now I'm going to just put that there. I want more white because I'm going to be doing some stenciling, and I want the white to go where I'm putting the stenciling so that the colours of the stenciling shows through. So I'm going to be doing some stenciling over here. I'm going to be doing some stenciling up here. If you want to finger paint this part, you can. You know, that's half the fun. Okay, and I will dry that. It's only on thin, so it won't take long. Clean my brayer, and I'm going in with a bit of Sedona to make a really thin and rustic border. So a little bit, maybe a little bit more. That's about the size of a pea. And again, I'm going to have it so that it's making a thin line on my brayer. Like that. And I'm just going to roll it and create a border. just a thin border. I might put some up there. And into that corner there. And then roll that off. When you put your brayer down, they have these stands on them. Make sure it's that way, because if you put it that way, the brayer, if it's wet, sticks to your paper, and then the paper sticks to your brayer. Your brayer. So it becomes really hard to clean. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like at the moment. Liking that? I love that. I could just keep that in my stash and I'd be quite happy with that. But what I'm going to do is grab my stencil. Now it's Feather Leaf from Lavinia. Grab my 2 inks. I'm going to use both of them. And I might use 2 brushes, actually. Now, if that's sitting up there, I want some coming here and some going over there, and I'm going to put the stenciling around into that corner. So, I'm just looking for some interesting parts that I think will work for me. I'm going in with my rustic orange first. And then I'm just going to give a little bit of highlight to a couple. Yeah, pretty. So that's how that's looking. So orange and confetti together. So I like to do the light one. And then just give it a hit with the confetti like that. And some coming up into this white area. So my white area is going to be all covered up. There's still some on my brush, so I'll just use what's on my brush. Lavinia have brought out some new brushes that are smaller, and I'm thinking they'll be really nice for getting into all the details on your stencils. So I'm going to get myself some. Just waiting for them to become available before I order them in. Nice. That's how it's looking at the moment. I'm just going to dry that at this stage. Well, I've got the heat tool going. I'll put the lids on the inks. I'll just bring you back up for a sec because I want to explain why I used Elements inks. Because it's a water-based ink, normally water-based inks won't set on a paint background. They'll just smudge. But this does set. So due to it being heavily pigmented, it sets on a painty background. Great for when you're using your gel plates. You could, if you haven't got Elements inks, use archival inks. I'm not sure. Perhaps you can use the VersaFine Clear inks. I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to lead you up the garden path. But definitely Elements inks or archival inks will set on a paint background. Okay, back down to the table. My messy craft sheet. So I've got a stamp. It's I'm using my Delusions journal block because it's got lines on it and I can measure up the bottom word along the line, and I know that if I put the stamp down straight, because of that line, I know that my words will be straight. Ink that up. Nice juicy ink pad. Words are scary, especially when you're using rubber and you can't see where they're going. So I like to use things with grids on them. If you haven't got things with grids, just grab some photocopy paper and do some practice ones to make sure that you've got it straight. Now I'm going to stamp it about, not in the middle, a little bit higher. So this just fits, and fingers crossed that it's straight. I think it is. By eye, I'm looking at that straight edge there. Looks like it's roughly equal with the bottom of the card. And release and lift. Oh yes. How lucky is that? So that's how that's looking at the moment. I'm going to dry that before I smudge it because I know what I'm like. And if I angle it into the light, I can see if it's dry. Right. So this is where we're at. Okay. Next part. This flower, I'm going to place it so that the leaves come down into the words, but not covering the words. And the bottom one, I want the leaf going up and filling in that gap. I can also see if I need any more stenciling anywhere, but I'm really happy with that amount of stenciling. I could put some here, and you know, I think I will. Just in pale orange. I could go a yellow, like a Sahara or something like that, but it's over on the shelf, so I won't worry about it. And I just want a little one, just to fill in that gap. I can just put it on lightly. A bit more. Nice. Right, so now when I put that back, you can see where I've added a little bit of stenciling coming up. Okay. Now I need my glue. With oh, it's stuck. Well, here it comes. With the funky stick, you've got to work quick because it dries fast. And it goes on purple, but it dries clear. And I want that to go, maybe just angle it so it's right. And I need because it dries fast, I probably should put a lid back on that until I'm ready for it. So that goes over the edge. You can see we're going to trim that off shortly. And you do the same with the bottom flower. Oh, there's an image on the back. It's because I stamped it the first time and I I just didn't stamp it properly, so I re-stamped it on the other side so as not to waste paper. Oh, I should call it cardstock, shouldn't I? The card that I'm using is the card that I sell in my shop, a mixed media card. It's only 220 gram thickness, so I find that works for me really good. Goes that way. I'm going to put that there. There are purple bits of glue, but they're going to dry clear. So I'm not stressed about that. No point getting stressed, is there? Meant to be relaxing when we're making cards. It does dry really quick. Okay, now all I have to do is turn it over and trim off the excess. If I turn the card over and trim, I can see where the edge of the card is, and that gives me a nice straight line. Just like that. And there's our card. If you wanted to, you could, I'll just bring it back up. If you wanted to, you could colour your flowers in. You don't have to have them white. The white leaves would look good. I just like the contrast of white, embracing white space. Just adds a little bit more drama to your card and makes other things stand out more. So that's how it's looking. This was our original, so pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. When you're using a gel plate, you're never going to get the same print twice. You could do this, it would look awesome if you, and I'll stick to the Dina Wakley colours, if you used umber with some greens. There's a nice, oh, I haven't got them handy. There's a lime green, an evergreen and an umber. That would be an awesome combination, especially with the flowers. If you want to put birds on it, you can put birds. You don't have to use flowers. If a big image of some sort, so you may have a large butterfly and some smaller butterflies. So you could do this with butterflies, you could do it with trees, you could do this as a Christmas card, a large Christmas image here, and some baubles dangling down. That would be a nice card to make for Christmas, and a pretty easy background. It doesn't take too long at all, I don't think. And I loved using my gel plate. Okay, thank you.